coming into the presence of the living God, the God of Israel, is such a terrifying event that it strikes him dead. And God's wrath doesn't even burn out against him. God doesn't seek him out to deal with him. In fact, God calls him. This is a vision where God is telling him what he wants him to do. And it is still such an overwhelming presence that he, like you or I, would simply fall down and die in God's presence, because he, like you and I, is a sinner. But before we go on too far here, there is a little detail that we mustn't miss. Now, can I have that next slide up, please? No, forward. Thank you. Where does he see God coming from? Go back to verse 4. Verse 4. From the north. Now, details not great. That is the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Right? That's Israel. Okay. This is called the Fertile Crescent because this is desert. And you don't cross the desert. Egypt. Okay. Babylon. Babylon, Persia. Modern day Iran. Now, where do people come from? Well, you don't come from the east, from the west, from the water. You don't come from the east. And Egypt, they were sometimes allies of the people of Judah. But from the north, that's where the enemies came from. This area, people would be going through to take over Egypt because that's what you did. I asked that in the history lectures. They said, everyone wanted to take over Alexandria in Egypt. And I said, why? And he said, they just did. Maybe it was the money. But as they would go through, they would wipe out Israel. And so when Babylon comes, they don't come across the desert, they come from the north. And so God comes from the north. God comes into the presence of his people as an enemy. Thank you. Next slide. God comes into the presence of his people as an enemy. The north is where the Assyrians came from 100 years before. The north is where the Babylonians came from 5 years before. To the west is water, the east is desert, the south is Egypt, but the north is the enemy. And when God comes in the vision of might and power, with a voice like rushing waters, he speaks in thunder. The mere sight of him is enough to strike Ezekiel dead, and he comes as an enemy of his people. We're told in the first 5 verses of this book that the people of God are in exile. They're out of the land of Israel. And God is their enemy. This is horrific. It's unbelievable. It's terrible. God comes as the enemy of his people because of their wickedness, as Jono pointed out for us. The covenant people of God, the people who were supposed to show God to the rest of the world, had performed spiritual adultery. They had gone off with other gods and worshipped other creatures. They proclaimed that they worshipped the Lord, Yahweh, but they worshipped Asherah and Baal and Moloch. And after warning them over and over and over again for hundreds of years, God arrives on the scene to deal with their sinfulness. Come with me to the rest of Ezekiel 2 and 3. I'm going to read for a little while. God said, Son of man, this is verse 3 of chapter 2, I am sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their fathers have been in revolt against me to this very day. The people to whom I am sending you are obstinate and stubborn. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. And whether they listen or fail to listen, as they are a rebellious house, for they will know that you are a prophet, that a prophet has been among them. And you, son of man, do not be afraid of them or their words. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions. Do not be afraid of what they say, or terrified by them, though they are a rebellious house. You must speak my words to them, whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are a rebellious house. But you, son of man, listen to what I say to you. Do not rebel like that rebellious house. Open your mouth and eat what I give to you. Then I looked, and I saw a hand stretched out to me. In it was a scroll, which he unrolled before me. On both sides of it were written words of lament and mourning and woe. And he said to me, Son of man, eat what is before you. Eat this scroll. Then go and speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to eat. Then he said to me, Son of man, eat the scroll I am giving you, and fill your stomach with it. So I ate it, and it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. He then said to me, Son of man, go now to the house of Israel, and speak my words to them. You are not being sent to a people of obscure speech and difficult language, but to the house of Israel. Not to many peoples of obscure speech and difficult language, whose words you cannot understand. Surely if I'd sent you to them, they would have listened to you. But the house of Israel is not willing to listen to you, because they are not willing to listen to me. For the whole house of Israel is hardened and obstinate. But I will make you as unyielding and hardened as they are. I will make your forehead like the hardest stone, harder than flint. Do not be afraid of them or terrified by them, though they are a rebellious house. And he said to me, Son of man, listen carefully and take heart to all the words I speak to you. Go now to your countrymen in exile and speak to them, say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, whether they listen or fail to listen. Then the Spirit lifted me up, and I heard behind me a loud rumbling sound. May the glory of the Lord be praised in his dwelling place. The sound of the wings of the living creatures brushing against each other, and the sound of the wheels beside them, a loud rumbling sound. The Spirit then lifted me up and took me away, and I went in bitterness and in the anger of my spirit, with the strong hand of the Lord upon me. I came to the exiles who lived at Tel Aviv, near the Kibar River, and there where they were living, I sat among them for 7 days, overwhelmed. At the end of 7 days, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. So hear the word I speak, and give them warning from me. When I say to a wicked man, you will surely die, and you do not warn him, or speak out to dissuade him from his evil ways in order to save his life, that wicked man will die for his sin, and I will hold you accountable for his blood. But if you do warn the wicked man, and he does not turn from his wickedness or from his evil ways, he will die for his sin, but you will have saved yourself. Again, when a righteous man turns from his righteousness and does evil, and I put a stumbling block before him, he will die. Since you did not warn him, he will die for his sin. The righteous things he did will not be remembered, and I will hold you accountable for his blood. But if you do warn the righteous man not to sin, and he does not sin, he will surely live, because he took warning, and you have saved yourself. The hand of the Lord was upon me there, and he said to me, get up and go out to the plain, and there I will speak to you. So I got up and went out to the plain, and the glory of the Lord was standing there, like the glory I had seen by the Kibar River, and I fell face down.